Alrighty, we got another one to cover, and I'm not super thrilled about this one either, but guys, I think Donald Trump may actually be out for blood. Like literally is a bloodthirsty person. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying that because I just don't like the guy. I do not like the guy, but, well, I can't get into that without showing you this. This was made by Stoff. Stoff said that they were doing some flat colors today. Have a Suris carrying a Suris. So if you wanted a panty shot today, this is how you get one. And now you have boot designs for both characters, for those of you who are weird and in defeat. Anyway, people have been having way too much fun with the Suris alternate universe stuff, and there's a project in the works in regards to this stuff too. That is a story for Pernia to tell. That said, as always, thank you for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get right into this madness. So,
Free city. By the way, speaking of that, anybody murders something in the capital punishment. Capital punishment. If somebody kills somebody.
Oh, alliteration.
In the capital, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty. And that's a very strong preventative. And everybody that's heard it agrees with it. I don't know if we're ready for it in this country, but where you have it, it is, we have no choice. So in D.C. and Washington, states are going to have to make their own decision. But if somebody kills somebody, like you could have been killed, very lucky you didn't get killed, it's the death penalty, okay? Fantastic job you're doing, thank you.
So, just so you guys know, a report by the National Research Council concluded that the existing research on the death penalty's ability to work as a deterrent is entirely inconclusive. There is no evidence to support that the death penalty operates functionally as a deterrent. Many studies show that states with the death penalty do not get lower crime rates than those without, which is a very strong suggestion that it had no effect as a deterrent. Most crimes are committed impulsively during the heat of the moment. Because they are committed compulsively or impulsively, they are not committed without consideration of the potential consequences, and that includes the death penalty. If you want to lower crime rates, social factors such as economic conditions, policing strategies need to be changed. You can do all kinds of things to actually affect crime rates, but the death penalty is not one of them. You can change how police respond to crime. You can change the economic conditions people are in. You can change the way people are treated while incarcerated, so that the chance of recidivism goes down. These are all things that have a actual effect, like a statistically beneficial effect in reducing crime rates. The death penalty does not actually do that. And even if it were able to do that, even in the world where it did do that, it's probably a good idea to point out that we should not be giving anybody, state or otherwise, the right to murder your fellow American citizen. There is no argument I can conceive of where I should be able to willingly give up my right to life to a police officer, to a judge, to a politician. Why should they have that kind of power? Why should they have that kind of authority? Why should they be allowed to have that kind of authority? If you are a parent and you are for the death penalty, you are arguing that a state official should have the ability to kill your child if they decide it is necessary, because that is ultimately what the death penalty is and does. The death penalty also, in a non-zero amount of cases, is implemented on somebody, and then a year or two later, the case is reopened up, and we find that the person that we killed was not actually the fucking culprit. Even though a jury tried them and said beyond a shadow of a doubt they were the culprit, evidence later suggests they were not. And that happens too fucking often. Literally any time over one is too often. but too fucking often. There's always going to be an ongoing debate over whether the death penalty deters crime, because there are going to be people who think that it works because in their gut of guts and their heart of hearts, they believe it functions. And then there are going to be people who look at studies and say that it doesn't work, and those two people are always going to have a fucking fight. It's just like there's always going to be a fight between people who believe in evolution and people who believe in creationism. That fight's always going to exist. Even though the evidence only truly exists on one side of the conversation, there will still be that fight because that is what people do. They pick a side, and then they stupidly adhere to it, irrespective of evidence. Donald Trump is demanding the death penalty for all murders in Washington, D.C., despite capital punishment being banned in the Capitol more than 40 years ago. The president is a bloodthirsty moron. He just wants to see people die. The president made his declaration during a rambling cabinet meeting on Tuesday as his administration carried out its crime crackdown in the national capital with the deployment of the National Guard. Anybody murders something in the Capitol, capital punishment. All right, well, I went to the Capitol and I had some fucking amazing pasta. So I murdered that pasta awfully good. Guess I die. Pick your words better, Donnie. If somebody kills something in the Capitol, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty. This declaration is likely to ruffle the feathers in the nation's capital further, as capital punishment faces a unique situation in the city. Washington formally repealed the death penalty in 1981. In 1992, D.C. residents voted against reinstating it as a referendum ordered by Congress. However, while D.C. has banned the death penalty, federal prosecutors can still push for capital punishment for certain federal crimes, as the district is subject to congressional oversight. The president said the states would have to make their own decisions, but he wanted capital punishment in D.C. for all murders. We have no choice. The last time that we executed anybody in D.C. was in 1957. The president's announcement was his latest attempt at power grabbing in the district. This was following the federalization of the Metropolitan Police more than 2 weeks ago and his deployment of the National Guard, which I've already argued is to make people softer on the idea of being policed by a fucking military in the first place. Trump has declared the militarization of D.C. to be a great success. He and other members of his administration have highlighted that the nation's capital has had no homicides for 12 days. The president has claimed that it has not happened in years, but there were 2 other 7 or more day stretches this year alone where there were no recorded homicides. This is one of those things where it's not necessarily causative. And even if it's causative, there's nothing to suggest that this is going to continue being the trend. Local leaders have argued that crime has been on the decline since its recent peak in Washington in 2023. The Trump admin has dismissed crime data for the Metropolitan Police Department as false. More than 2,000 members of the Guard have been deployed to the nation's capital since Trump's announcement. The president has suggested that he would bypass Congress if necessary to continue his takeover of Washington, D.C. and declare a national emergency. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show you a thing real quick. You know what's the cool thing about declaring a national emergency over every little fucking thing? When this happens.
Federation. In response to this direct threat to the Republic, Misha proposed that the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just throwing it out there that we've watched this story take place before. And because people didn't like the Star Wars prequels, nobody fucking listened.
Great reluctance that I have agreed to this calling. I love democracy. I love the Republic. The power you give me, I will lay down when this crisis has abated.
Yeah, totally. He'll totally lay those powers down. He'll totally lay those powers down, guys. So, do you remember what followed that?
In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.
So, again, does anybody remember how this particular story ends?
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
Because I know how this story ends. I remember how this story ends, because I actually like the Star Wars prequels. I've been beginning to like them more and more, because they keep on being wonderful mirrors for what we're actually going through. Why would Donald Trump be seeking the death penalty? Because he wants the ability to kill people. He wants it to be legal for him to kill people. It happening through Congress is his own thing. It's whatever for him. Kiwi Bird says that is the gift of prophecy going to the goofy little guys meme, but Star Wars flavored. Yep. Trump has signaled that he wants to deploy the National Guard to other United States cities going forward. The president on Friday specifically floated Chicago as his next target, as he argues crime in the Deep Blue City is out of control. He also suggests deploying troops to New York and Baltimore. I have the right to do anything I want to do. I am the president of the United States. If I think our country is in danger, and it is in danger in these cities, I can do it for a safe and secure society. I'm tired, y'all. I'm so incredibly tired. Just why? Why is the United States? Kiwi Bird says, okay, not fun, New Yorker here, can confirm a lot more helicopters flying overhead. Yeah, I don't think I felt safer in New York during the military parade when I was there, not New York, DC. When I was there and I was just like seeing every single thing in our arsenal fly overhead, I didn't feel safer as a result. So you're saying Palpatine had dementia? No, I'm saying Trump looked at Palpatine and said, nice, I want that. Why? Why is this like this? Also, Rambler Bishop says Jar Jar knew Jar Jar was the Sith. Barely mentioned, but my friends are saying that it's happening soon. He's also going to New Mexico. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. But don't worry, everybody. He said he would be a dictator on day one, but he also didn't say that he was going to stop afterwards. Trump is a person who loves control. He loves the idea of being in power. His biggest lament, his biggest concern is not for the safety of United States citizens. His biggest concern, more than anything, is that this is a country that he does not have absolute power in, but he desperately wants absolute power. He wants the United States, and if you want evidence of this outside of what we've seen from, the Supreme Court, the powers they've given him, if you want evidence that Trump wants total control, that is something that is in his goals, I can tell you the best bit of evidence you can ever find. Trump deems himself a businessman, but he's never a businessman in the entrepreneurial sense. He's always a businessman in the sense that he owns everything, that he is a baron. This is a man who, before his first presidency, was worth $2 billion and is now worth far more than that. So I want to ask you the question, if you are a person who needs to always be in charge and needs to be in charge of the business, what do you have? In any business, you have absolute control if you are the one who owns the business. Trump wants to see America as a business that he owns. He wants to see it as a business that he is in charge of, that he is in control of. So whenever he sees an aspect of the United States that he does not have power over, it ruffles his feathers. It gets him upset. It gets him mad. It gets him angry. We can see this with his ego, too. Did you guys see the fucking ego stroking that was happening with him? Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Here. Again, if you want evidence that this is a person that wants total control, just look at how he wants to run businesses, and then remember that he wants to run the United States like one of his businesses, where he has that level of control.
Everybody here who spoke works at the Department of Labor, clearly, which I love. They have all the correct talking points, but I think that's a testament, again, that we are all working together every single day. We talk to each other often, and the workforce, the skilled workforce, the education factor, retirees, it's been so important because they all touch the Department of Labor, and I have the opportunity to work with every single one. If you all haven't stopped by the Department of Labor, Mr. President, I invite you to see your big, beautiful face on a banner in front of the Department of Labor, because you are really the transformational president of the American worker, along with the American flag and President Roosevelt.
Does that seem weird to you, just seeing the United States Labor Department just kind of literally just sucking his fucking dick? Like, is that not weird to y'all? Does that not strike you as strange? As, like, mildly off-putting at least?
Because we're bringing business and labor together, and I was so honored to unveil that yesterday, and everybody is taking note of that. You all, everybody here who has spoken.
It's just wild to me. It is just wild to me living in this timeline right now. Like I said, this is a man who needs absolute and total control, sycophancy, and loyalty. That is not a president. That is a wannabe despot. Rather, it's a wannabe dictator who is already a despot. Gaynor says that was a dick-sucking and fingering all at once. Yeah, it was. And the question will always be, why have we normalized this? Why is this something that we just accept as the state of affairs that we are in? Why should we have to accept that as our state of affairs that we're in? And better question, for how long should we have to accept that? Like, minimum, we have another 3 years with this shit. Unless his health caves in and he dies. Aaron says, I remember watching a video review of this awful book called Empress Theresa, and hearing Crimson Rogue ranting about how much Monster Theresa can't but imagine. Okay. You can't help but imagine that character as Donald Trump. I have no context for that character. I've none, so. Sean said he's hired again a doctor that no longer has credentials to just say that he's the healthiest person in the world. Well, yeah, of course. Like, why would you actually hire somebody that has credentials who's gonna have to, you know, tell the truth about how you are, like how healthy you are? That goes against his modus operandi. He needs to be the best. He needs to be the healthiest. He needs to be better than anyone else. My lungs are better than anybody else. My dick is bigger than anybody else's. It was amazing. They said, the doctors all said so when I whipped it out in front of them. Specious Demeanor says there's some health people pushing the rumor that he has less than a year. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if that's the case. I have no way to know if that's the case. I have no way to verify that, but it doesn't mean anything. So don't forget, he doesn't have dementia. He can pass a test for 5-year-olds. Yeah, totally. You don't have dementia. You're just the first United States president who needed to go to DDLG Playground, not for fun, but because you had no other choice. Whenever somebody asks how long does it take for Trump to go to the bathroom, the correct answer is depends. It is both the time and the solution. Sean says the last health person that I listened to said he had 6 to 8 months. Granted, this was the middle of the year, and we're on the 8th month, so that means he'll still live through the year. Dragonic says even if he dies because of his health, the left will be blamed for it. There'll be a billion conspiracies around his death if he dies. And not only will there be a million conspiracies around his death if he dies, but on top of the conspiracies, we're gonna be left with the fucking dude who loved Yawgmoth's bargain in Magic the Gathering as our president. And I don't fucking want anybody with that repertoire, much less how the dude seems to feel about fucking couches. John says yes, and hopefully at least 3 of them will be around J.D. Vance because everybody still says J.D. Vance murdered the Pope, including the conservatives. Axo says, hey, maybe the couches could help with the birth rates. Look, all I can say is I think J.D. Vance will do everything in his power. JD, I killed the Pope Vance. I think JD Vance will do everything in his power to make sure that the Navy is well taken care of and well furnished. Because as we all know, J.D. Vance has semen between his cushions. Falcon the Fearless says, some will probably say that we stared at him too hard. Do you think MAGA is going to be like how the citizens of North Korea were during the death of Kim Jong-il, where they had to be held back by the army from swarming his casket? Oh, probably. Oh, probably, definitely. Dragonic says, is that why they're called love seats? Yes, absolutely. Kiwi Bird says, the thing about Trump getting replaced is that nobody else has the sauce, though. They won't need the sauce if they already have the power, and Trump has already eroded so many of the powers from the other branches of government compared to what he himself has, that it doesn't really matter if anybody else has the sauce. If they put forth an executive order, it will get followed, sauce or not. Like, everything he's doing is terrifying in its own right, but it's more terrifying to consider that everything he's doing paves the way for the next, more competent Trump. Like, I remember when the Republican president was the dude that we could make fun of because he was a silly little goober and he was dumb. But now the silly little goober doesn't just start wars in other countries. The silly little goober is trying to have a fucking war in the United States. Do any of you think that Tim Pool's having just an actual meltdown right now? Oh my God, why is it that that my guy is doing everything in his power to make the Civil War that I kept shrieking about for years actually happen? Naki Bree says, you know, Trump is going to do one great thing at least. He'll make an amazing transgender bathroom. What? Is it because a trans person's going to shit on his grave? We're going to have to hide the grave of Donald Trump to make sure that nobody gives it the big poop? Well, Donald Trump, you sure do be making really good fertilizer right now. Let me help you with that. There will be no grass growing on his grave. So now they'll give him a Graham memorial if they can. Can we not give him a memorial? Much less a memorial. Anyway, I don't like that America's doing this. I don't like that Donald Trump is sitting there being a bloodthirsty motherfucker. Let's talk about something more happy or less happy. Like Donkey Kong. Did you know that Chunky's dead? Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie-chan, Kiri Artemis, Limor Pinku, Love Bunny Games, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Aurora, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it. Just a little bit.